So, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you may be here across the globe. It's 12 noon on the dot for me, but I know we have varying locations. This is Laurel Burton, and I want to introduce you to Otava's latest webinar. We're going to be focused on Otava's Gen 3 Cloud debut and also an overview of cloud and best practices in terms of optimization. So, without further ado, let's get started. Let me first start with an agenda, let you know a little bit about what we're covering today, and then I'll introduce our panelists and we'll jump right in. In terms of an agenda today, we're going to cover a couple items. Number one, we're going to talk a little bit about digital transformation and how all paths lead to the cloud. Number two, we're going to talk about which workloads are best suited for private cloud, which ones are best suited for public cloud and why, and really figuring out that best optimization. We're going to talk about cloud migration and how to de-risk that cloud migration. And last but not least, we're going to talk about and introduce you to Otava's newest cloud. It's our Generation 3 cloud. In fact, we just launched it this week, and we're very excited to share with you a little bit about the feature functionality. We're going to go through a live demonstration so you can see it in use. And then we're going to finish off by letting you know about our 30-day free trial promotion to get you started and playing in that sandbox. So a little bit more about our panelists today. Of course, I'm Laurel Burton. I'm with Otava. I am our Vice President of Product and Marketing. I'm going to be serving as today's moderator. But I am very pleased and humbled to have with me several special guests. First of all, Patrick Verhoeven is a true expert at VMware. He's one of their top cloud strategists. Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. A real pleasure to be here with you guys. So, yeah, I'm a cloud strategist at VMware. I've been in the cloud IT space for over 20 years for companies like Accenture, Verizon, Terramark. I've lived on both sides of the equation, right? The cloud provider side, the vendor side. And we're really excited about the work that Otava is doing with VMware. We believe that we have a very strong, compelling vision, and that vision is really being executed through partners like Otava. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Bigler, who is our Director of Product Management here at Otava.
Good morning, everybody. I will have to say I am really excited about today's webinar. This is a huge event for us, and I think it's going to have huge impact and benefit for y'all. I do handle product and product strategy here at Otava in Laurel's organization. Like Patrick, I've been in cloud for probably longer than I care to admit, and various IT functions before cloud was cloud. But really looking forward to exposing some of the features, functionality, and outcomes that we're seeing with this platform.
Thanks, Jeremy. And last but certainly not least, Chris Rizzo, a product manager with Otava. He's going to be slightly more behind the scenes. He's going to be running our demonstration, our live demonstration today. Chris, say hello.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Chris Rizzo, product manager with Otava. I've been with the company for just over 10 years now in various roles. My primary focus is on our cloud business, and just really excited to show you the tool and all the great features.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. Well, let's jump into our first topic then today. So where we're going to start is really just building the foundation. Let's set the tone for today's conversation and really talk about digital transformation first. I am sure for this audience, there are no surprises here that the rapid pace of digital transformation, it's accelerating, it's growing, there's only more and more momentum. It's like a snowball running down that hill. And in fact, as the slide shows, more applications and solutions are going to be deployed in the next 5 years than in the last 40 years combined. And that tells you a little bit about that acceleration. And in fact, IDC is predicting that over 500 million new applications and services, all with that cloud native approach baked in, are going to be in the market by 2023. That's incredible. And you can see here on the slide some of the catalysts behind that: artificial intelligence, IoT, process automation, and the list goes on. And I think what this really leads to is a great big question, which is how in the world are IT leaders anywhere on this globe going to keep pace with this rapid speed of change? And there are some factors in order to keep pace. Number one, it's about expediting innovation, whether that's internally or leveraging best of breed providers such as a VMware and others. It's about building out to the edge. It's about leveraging and integrating artificial intelligence. In fact, another interesting stat I found, 90% of new applications are going to have artificial intelligence embedded in them by 2025. But by far, the greatest catalyst here and the greatest opportunity to keep pace is the cloud and leveraging the cloud. And in fact, as the slide says, 75% of IT leaders agree that this is the most critical part of their digital transformation strategy. And with that in mind and setting the tone for the conversation, now we're going to jump right into actual cloud and really what that means to all of us. So what I want to do is, Patrick, I want to open up with you and send the first question over to you regarding cloud transformation at VMware and just across the field here. What are you seeing in terms of trends when it comes to transformation?
Yeah, so the pace of change is just phenomenal, right? It's been blistering fast for the last 10 years. I think it's just going to pick up for the next 10, right? It's just amazing how quickly the industry has changed. And when we look at the cloud market in general and we start to unpack the data, what we see is not only a shift from on-prem to off-prem, but we're starting to see these new hybrid and multi-cloud design patterns emerge, which is really what this slide talks about. So VMware, for example, we have a huge installed base, right? Like IDC will tell you that we have about 76% market share across software-defined compute infrastructure, right? So that's the installed base and embedded base of vSphere. And when we go out and survey our VMware customers, right, what we hear from them is 80, even more, sometimes 90% of them, right, are telling us that hybrid cloud, right, and having consistency of architecture and a consistent operating model between what's running on-prem and what's running out in a cloud context, right, needs to be consistent. So that is absolutely central to their IT strategies. And what we're now starting to see as well is the emergence of this concept multi-cloud, right? Where now we're also starting to see customers increasingly deploying workloads into different cloud environments, right? Because at the end of the day, not all clouds are created equal. There are absolute differences between a VMware cloud versus, say, a hyperscale cloud. And even within the hyperscale community, we tend to think of public clouds as public clouds, but they're not. They're very different. AWS is very different than Azure, for example. And so what we need to do is be very thoughtful about which workloads land where, what are the pros and the cons, what are the blind spots that we're not thinking about, right? So that we're really thoughtful about dropping the right workload into the right environment, right? And so that's really, I think, the key thing that we're seeing here is that, cloud continues, the acceleration and the adoption of cloud continues at a very fast pace, but now we're starting to see these hybrid and multi-cloud strategies emerge as a key tenet.
Right, that makes sense. I'm curious with the pandemic and COVID-19, what impact has that played, if any, with what you're seeing on the acceleration here? Pace?
If anything, it's accelerated cloud adoption. Customers have been scrambling for the last 10 months trying to figure out how to protect and maintain their business. And they're really looking more and more at cloud as an extension of their data centers and their environments. So in many cases, they've accelerated the cloud journeys that they were already on, or they've started those cloud journeys. The one thing that we are seeing that's a little bit different is maybe some of the use case drivers are starting to shift a little bit because of COVID. Whereas 12 months ago, data center consolidation and evacuation was a big use case that we were seeing, right? Today, what we see is a more tactical use case. So for example, I need bursting capacity, or I need a DR target site, or the real big one, of course, is end user computing solutions on cloud environments. So think of virtual desktops, right, and enabling remote workers, right, and leveraging cloud infrastructure to deliver those types of use cases. So if anything, COVID has accelerated it, and I think that's one of the reasons why you see all the tech companies doing so well in the stock market. So not only has it accelerated it, but we're also starting to see a small shift in some of the use cases to address some of those immediate concerns and needs that customers have.
One point, Laurel, I'd add to that is right, this coincides with some of our previous content. around the dramatic increase in the threat landscape that now threatens a distributed and somewhat uncontrolled workforce. And that's been another impetus here for where we see that shift in use cases, right? Is how do I not only enable a distributed workforce, but how do I secure? And how do I maintain a proper security boundary and security infrastructure and still maintain compliant posture for those of us that are in a compliance environment in this shifting landscape of the new business of a distributed model.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeremy, right? All of these remote workers, right? That has dramatically increased the attack surface, right? So we absolutely see that as well.
That makes sense. Well, clearly we've established the fact that cloud is a critical strategy, that the real issue here is balancing of the right workloads to the right situation here. And as the slide comes up, Patrick, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about which workloads are ideal for public cloud, which workloads are ideal for private cloud, and a little bit about the statistic that from Gartner that we see on the slide today.
Yeah, so this is a great slide, right? And this really kind of tells the story in a very simple way. So what Gartner did here is, they obviously talked to a lot of customers, they talked to a lot of providers, and based on their collective experience, right, they did this model and this scenario where they said, okay, if we have a customer that, let's say, is moving 2,500 VMs from a vSphere environment into native AWS or native Azure, right? What would that customer journey look like? And what you see on this graphic is a couple of really important points. Number one, what you see is that it is a 3-year journey, right? So this is taking much longer than most customers realize or expect. And at the end of that 3-year journey, what you see is that they do start to get to a 55% TCO reduction, but that 55% TCO reduction makes two really, really big assumptions that we might challenge, right? The first big assumption here is you can see at the end of year 2, that dark blue line, right? That's the on-prem data center estate. And you can see here in this scenario, right, the customer is fully evacuating their data center and moving completely to cloud. Now, in some cases that is absolutely happening, but in many cases, that is a very difficult thing to do, right? We have lots of applications and legacy environment and technical debt that is very difficult to move to a public cloud. So I would challenge whether or not we're ever going to evacuate the on-prem estate completely, right? And of course, the risk there, if you don't, is now you have two IT control plans, right? You've got some tools and people and processes running your on-prem environments, and then you have tools, processes, and staff running your cloud environment. So that's the first big assumption that I would challenge. And the second big assumption here that we see is, as that public cloud spend starts to ramp up towards the end of year 2, right, we slowly start to see that come down in year 3, right? Because this assumes that the customer has the skill set and the expertise to right-size their public cloud spend. And I will tell you, from all the people that I speak to, the analysts, the product managers, the customers and partners, right-sizing your cloud spend is very difficult to do, right? EC2 alone in AWS has like 1 million SKUs, right? 451 Research will tell you that across the major hyperscalers last year, there were like 1.2 million SKU changes of existing services, right? So think about the complexity associated with right-sizing those environments. It is very, very difficult to do. Now, the good news here, of course, is all of our audience here have access to partners like Otava, where you guys have that kind of expertise and you can help them on that journey, right? But the key message here is we can get to a 55% TCO reduction if we evacuate our data center and we have the skill set to right-size our environment. And yeah, go ahead, Jeremy. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I wanted to hone in on one of those points, right? And you're spot on, Patrick, in that 55% may be, in some cases, overly aggressive from an expectation perspective, or an ROI, total cost reduction, rather, in that magnitude. But one thing that organizations also don't think about or conceptualize here is that light gray line, which is the cost of moving those workloads, right?
Yeah.
And this, by the way, is not application modernization. This is simply just rehoming workloads into a different environment, right? There's a high cost here to organizations that factor into how long you're actually going to take before you realize your return on that investment. So although there is the potential of fairly significant total cost of ownership reduction, you're not seeing the ROI from that investment for some period of time. In this particular case, it was around 7 years. And organizations, I think, need to consider that because they're expecting day zero in many cases for whom we've spoken to, day zero benefit, and that is simply not realistic in the cost, complexity, and time that it takes to actually affect the shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty, I think, of the Otava cloud value proposition is what Otava will be able to do for all of you is greatly compress that timeline from years to weeks or months, right? Because we're moving vSphere to vSphere, makes it much, much simpler. We can establish a layer 2 network. We can easily move those workloads, right? So that's the first thing that the Otava cloud is going to do. And as Jeremy knows, right, the second thing the Otava cloud is going to do is really eliminate the cost, time, and risk of that migration bubble, right? Those big gray bars. And in eliminating that, right, we greatly improve the ROI and the time to value.
Exactly, and another key benefit here, right, is productivity, which is a hard to quantify number, right? It's not included in this matrix or this chart, but impact to productivity really resolves around having to take IT and other members of the organization and retool them around one or more methods of management and operation in these hyperscale environments. Whereas moving from a VMware to a VMware environment in the case of Gen 3 cloud platform eliminates that disruption entirely. It removes that cost, removes that delay, and allows organizations to continue operations as expected, or hopefully with some additional benefits over and above the delay and disruption that a refactor of that skill set would require.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, one important thing I would also share on this slide is, you know, I want to be really clear with the audience, right? I don't think Jeremy or either one of us is saying that workloads should not move to public cloud. That is not the message, right? The message here is really that not all workloads belong in a hyperscale public cloud, right? For this very reason, right? There is a large estate of traditional apps where you just cannot make the business case to refactor those, right? And that's really the message here is, you know, think about your application estate, think about which applications you do want to refactor, think about which ones you want to rehost, right? Because it's going to have a dramatic impact on the economics of your business, essentially.
Well, it's as if you knew what was coming next. You just led me right into the next slide, which is really to understand that not the repatriation, but really which ones are best suited for private cloud versus public cloud. And I thought this was an interesting statistic. I think a lot of folks have gone in both feet first into public cloud, you know, private cloud aside. And you're right, it's a balance. What we're talking about today is all about that path to hybridity. But could one of you talk a little bit about what we're seeing on this particular slide, which is really which ones are best suited, again, on the right-hand side, for the private cloud versus public cloud optimization?
Yeah, so I like this slide a lot as well. And to be clear for the audience here, this comes from IDC, right? And what IDC is saying here is not that 85% of workloads are being repatriated, but rather that 85% of customers are experiencing some degree of repatriation, right? And the top reasons are kind of what you would expect. Performance issues, data sovereignty, changing regulations, much higher costs than would be expected, right? Gartner would tell you, you know, customers are getting bills that are 2, 3, 4 times higher than expected. Security concerns with things like open S3 buckets, latency, data egress for chatty applications, right? Those are kind of the main reasons why we see workloads being repatriated. And when we think about, you know, which workloads belong where, you know, here's kind of what I would say, Laurel, right? So first off, every customer's journey is going to be a little bit unique, right? It's going to depend a little bit on your applications, your skills, your resources. Are you a startup or are you a legacy company that has a lot of traditional investments, right? So there's a lot of variables that go into every customer's journey, but we do see some kind of broad themes, right? So for example, traditionally, I would say over the last 5-10 years, you know, what you typically hear analysts and other people talk about is the fact that, you know, a VMware-based cloud, right, traditionally has been ideally suited for what Gartner calls mode 1 applications. These are, think of traditional N-tier applications. Think of systems of record like a back office function, right? Or a custom critical business application, or a highly regulated compliant workload that needs a lot of additional security controls, right? And what these kind of workloads have in common, I think, is that they tend to be stable, they tend to be well-defined, they have low rates of change. And so when we think about migrating those types of workloads into the cloud, what we're really concerned about is, we want good SLAs, we want strong security, we want optimized performance, we want a partner that can deliver managed services, that we can offload some of those tasks, right? Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for as a customer. And that's where VMware clouds traditionally have really shined. And if we compare and contrast that to public clouds, traditionally what we've seen is, again, what Gartner would call mode 2 applications. So think of a cloud native architecture or microservices architecture where you have a lot of fluidity and you have high rates of change, right? You're doing a lot of development and you're making a lot of changes to that application. Traditionally, those are the kinds of applications that we've seen land in hyperscale public clouds. And my last comment here is, while that is the traditional view, I would also tell all of you that I believe that that traditional view is quickly changing, because there are some fundamental changes happening in the industry in terms of how we are better enabling traditional apps on public clouds, but also equally important is how we're enabling cloud native architectures on the VMware stack. So if any of the audience here has been paying attention to VMware, you'll know that in the last 18 months, we have been on an acquisition tear, and we have been building out a tremendous cloud native service portfolio called the Tanzu portfolio. We're doing things like embedding Kubernetes natively into vSphere. And the reason I share that with all of you is what this means for you is you will be able to deploy either a traditional or a cloud native application on the same stack, the same VMware stack, in any location, right? So the IT operators get what they need, which is control and security through vSphere, and the DevOps and developers get what they need, which is flexibility and choice through a Kubernetes API, for example. So, the way that we've thought about which workloads land where is very quickly starting to evolve and change.
Yeah, that's exciting. Jeremy, to you, I would love to hear examples. Obviously, what this means is that we need to do a very consultative approach with any particular client to make sure we understand, document the workloads, evaluate which environments are best, and then put that strategy together. Any examples that come to mind that we can share with the audience in terms of best practices here and what we've done in the past?
Sure. No names mentioned, but I think of an ISV who recently took one of their flagship business practices and moved that into the Azure stack. And the goal was proper and appropriate, right? Cost reduction, leveraging some of their capabilities around WVD, taking advantage of some pre-negotiated EA discounts with Microsoft, et cetera. What they found, though, in that journey was that to equate performance to what they were historically used to represented a 5x increase in billable dollars monthly, because they had to actually move from what was assumed to be a tier 2 storage into a tier 1 SSD storage based simply on overcommission of resources in the public cloud. They also saw a dramatic increase in the complexity to manage and operate that platform. Going back to the comment made earlier around having to retool their product management and product development teams, their IT support and service delivery teams, all around a different way to operate and manage that platform. They couldn't divorce themselves of their current knowledge, so now they've taken on essentially double the complexity to manage now 2 environments in this model that has resulted in them now looking at how do I maybe not repatriate, but how do I go back to a more predictable, less complex, less disruptive platform from which to deliver those services. Conversely, we think about organizations, right, that are embarking on a transformation journey. We have a few of those organizations as well that have quite successfully taken and created hybridity between, let's say, an Otava VMware-based cloud environment for those system of record or mode 1 application architectures that are required to be up, available, functional. They form the basis or foundation of that organization's back end. but yet in their cloud native journey, they are taking advantage of platform as a service and other features available in the hyperscalers, and creating hybridity between those environments so that they can interact and interoperate with both of them simultaneously. And that's worked out very well, but it does require, to your point made earlier, it does require a very close look at the application portfolio in an organization and an understanding of where each of those applications or business services can be best served, both from a current state and a future growth or transformation effort.
That makes sense. I mean, obviously that evaluation needs to happen fine tooth, and that's something that we can do with that client. Clearly there's multiple clouds in play, there's multiple applications in play, and part of what we need to do is assist along that journey. Let me pivot the conversation one more time here. I think we understand that cloud is critical here. We understand that there are pitfalls if we choose the wrong workloads for the wrong clouds, but there is a way to optimize, and there's a way to do that consultation to ensure we've optimized that spend, that efficiency, and those gains that we talked about. But I think that last hurdle in my mind is migration, right? And when I'm thinking about that, I'm really trying to understand, how am I going to move from one environment to another? And how do I do that with the least amount of risk, the least amount of complexity? I'll open it up to you again, Patrick. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on how to mitigate that risk factor when you are in the middle of the migrations.
Yeah, so we've touched on a couple of the concepts already. You know, the bottom line here, I think, is because we're moving from vSphere to vSphere, right, we are able to reduce the time, cost, and risk associated with your migration. Otava has a whole set of tools available to themselves to enable those migrations, whether it's a cold, warm, live migration, right, whether it's, critical, mission critical workloads, or whether it's a bulk migration, right? We have the tools to quickly extend your data center, to quickly move those workloads, to de-risk that process as much as we can, right? And the other key point that I would make on this slide that we often overlook, right, which is, you know, there is a benefit to using vSphere, right? It may not be the newest, shiniest object on the shelf, but vSphere is proven technology, right? There is a reason why we have 76% market share, broader OS support, more granular resource management, custom-sized instances. I mean, there's a lot of value in that as well, right? And we shouldn't lose sight of that. So I think the bottom line here is, we've got the tools to extend your network, your data center into an Otava environment, to be able to move those applications without having to re-IP them or remap them, and really make that migration very quick and very seamless.
One point I'd make here, in addition, Laurel, is we see a lot of organizations struggling in the hyperscaler model with data exit, right? How do I pull data back out of that environment? How do I pull that back into a premise location? Many of the organizations today who in fact have moved production into an Otava or similar cloud use their premise environment as a disaster recovery environment, right? Or for additional, burst or on-demand capacity. So that type of interoperability between a premises-based environment or architecture and one or more cloud environments, one of the things that I think would be part of any decision tree process here is how easy do I need to have access to my information, and how much of that information wants to transit both in and out, right? It's always easy to go into a hyperscaler. It's much more complex to take data out of. And that's something that we need to keep in mind before we execute a migration process or similar.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Good, I think that's good points made here. Let's move on to Otava's cloud. And Jeremy, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the Gen 3 cloud. I think first what I'd love for you to talk about are the flavors that are available, the consumption models available, and why one may suit one versus another. And then we're going to get back into the foundations and core elements. And then eventually here, we'll do a demo.
Love it. Yeah, so I think one of the unique differentiators that Otava brings in the Gen 3 platform is a pretty compelling combination of product offerings, which we'll go through here in just a second, as well as procurement models. So let's talk about the product offerings first. Right, shared cloud is, I think, what all of us may consider a cloud to be, right? It's a pure on-demand I use what I need when I need it, and I pay for what I use, right? This is perfect for workloads that have a lot of flex, need a lot of agility. Maybe businesses are taking a new product or service to market, and they want to be able to scale and flex that environment before they have some run rate understanding and traction to know what a long-term investment could be. And this has certainly a place in additionally business agility, right? Scaling up or down quickly based on either seasonal or peak demand and similar constraints. That is the first option in the Gen 3 cloud, is that shared cloud model. The second option, which we see a lot of the organizations in more legacy environments moving into, is a combination of a reserved set of resources and that flex agility or flex model style consumption. So the reserved portion is for our system of record run rate applications. We know what they're going to be. They change very infrequently. And that is something that we can leverage price incentives to lock into a commit around that sort of static environment, while still giving the business the chance to flex or to scale, right? Meet market changes in ways that we connect with customers and partners in our ecosystems, and introducing without having to go through legacy or complex changes to our engagement, new products or services to our portfolio. In our mind, this offers the benefits of both of those models to organizations. The price incentives of a reserved cloud with the ability to flex or scale as necessary. Last but not least, we have a true private cloud. And there's a couple different reasons why organizations move into this. First off, if I am a service provider, this allows me to take products and services out to my end users in a manner that I can control oversubscription, breakage, and margin tools to maximize my payback on those services. Number two, I may have products or services that require root level vCenter access or vCenter tie-ins or interconnectivity, right? Private cloud would be a phenomenal environment for that. Third, I may be in a compliant marketplace and I want to share nothing architecture for better compliance management or simply just to increase my security posture. All three of those are perfect use cases in that private cloud model. And organizations in this model get the benefit of having true dedicated architecture, true dedicated flexibility to divide and manage, control that with an unparalleled degree of administrative level control. No different than if you owned and operated the hardware yourself, but without the cost, complexity, and impact to agility of having to own, operate, and manage physical assets in a data center.
Sure, that makes sense. Obviously, VMware is here because we are based on VMware Cloud Director. Patrick, anything we haven't covered before about that cloud platform? And Jeremy, I would ask you to add in from the Otava specifics as well.
Yeah, so VMware Cloud Director is absolutely our flagship offering, right? The Otava team here is 100% aligned to VMware's vision and strategy, which is awesome. And what VMware Cloud Director does is it enables all those different cloud consumption models that Jeremy just covered, right? Shared multi-tenant cloud, dedicated private cloud, different SLAs, different service levels, right? It enables all of those different constructs, right? So what you're going to see here in a moment in the demo is the best-in-class HTML5 user interface that Cloud Director provides. You can also consume and access these resources through an API or through infrastructure as code using something like Terraform, for example. And at the end of the day, this is all about giving all of you choices and flexibility, right? Because not every workload is the same, right? The types of resources that we need for DR as a service or for dev test is very different than the types of resources that we need for those systems of record, right? And so all of those models that Jeremy just talked about, right, that's how we enable those, is through those VMware Cloud Director constructs.
And one point I think bears witness, right, as we're coming off the end of VMworld, right, and hopefully all of us or some of us have had a chance to take a peek at some of the future roadmap here, is the concept of single pane of glass management across multiple cloud instances, right? Multi-cloud is here to stay. It's not a trend. It's not a fad. We see the majority of organizations today consuming some form of multi-cloud. And this really provides us a great single pane of glass backdrop to manage and to orchestrate clouds regardless of where they live, and present those back to our organizations in a very simple to use, simple to consume focus for consumption and simplicity without that high level of complexity and disruption that we just talked about with hyperscalers.
Thank you, guys. In order to keep us moving here, a little bit to cover on, let's see if I can get that to jump in, a little bit about the secure and compliant posture of the cloud here. Jeremy, can you, or actually Patrick, why don't you talk a little bit about microsegmentation that could be enabled for our clients and some of the best practices around security there?
So yeah, a well-known analyst recently came out and said, you know, the best kept secret in IT is VMware security, right? We are doubling down on security. And the main reason that we're doubling down on security with our partners like Otava is because we believe that traditional security models are fundamentally broken, right? And increasingly what you're starting to hear the analyst and the vendor community talk about is the concept of a zero trust security posture, where we lock down the environment, right? To prevent the lateral threat of east-west traffic, right? And that's what microsegmentation does, is that it allows us to isolate networks and to isolate workloads and to provide very granular control. And we can provide this at layer 4 up through layer 7, right? So there's a lot that we can unpack here, maybe in a future session to really unpack this, but fundamentally, right, what this means to all of you is Otava is bringing a very secure, compliant cloud value proposition to the table that's really going to be ideal for those compliant, sensitive, regulated workloads, right, that you may have running in your data centers.
Jeremy, a little bit about compliance and security services that are baked into the Otava Cloud.
Certainly. So as many of you probably already know, right, Otava's is really our tagline, and our guiding principles here are really around secure and compliant hosting. And Gen 3 Cloud is certainly no exception there. Microsegmentation is one piece of that overall picture, but it is very important given the amount of east-west traffic, right? We see that earlier Patrick talked about sort of the threat landscape as being, you know, dramatically expanded now with the advent of some of the COVID hacks, specifically social engineering and the ability to introduce malware or other inappropriate materials into our environments through social engineering, which is something we can't really control through an IT basis. So how do we prevent or mitigate impact in the event that could happen? And that's really where east-west traffic segmentation based on policies and other tools that are available within the NSX platform come into play. That is one piece of our overall security posture. In addition to that, there's transit security around both layer 2, layer 3 VPNs, stretched layer 2 networking for some of those hybrid models that we just spoke about, and the coalescing of a lot of our traditional firewall and edge services into the NSX architecture. That gives us everything from a basic core firewall all the way through advanced traffic management, intrusion detection, prevention, and similar, right? Rounding that all off as hypervisor-based antivirus in a much more secure fashion than traditional agent-based models in past lives, let's say. This is something that's going to continue to evolve as well through the use of additional tools like Carbon Black and others from VMware, as well as additional process and automated-based security that help us address more appropriately day zero impact as well as predictable impact here.
And just in a quick minute or so, because I want to give you time for the demonstration, can you talk a little bit about some of the feature functionality that folks are going to find in the Otava Gen 3 Cloud, and then we'll move over to the demo?
Certainly. So I think we've touched on some of these already, but at a high level, right, from an enterprise perspective, I have a couple of interesting things here. One is I can provision now SLA hosting based on the workload or based on the business process, right? Not every business process is equivalent. We know that from our continuity planning. We know that from our business impact planning. So our cloud hosting shouldn't be an all-in, one style model, right? We should be able to tie hosting to specific SLAs for performance, and Gen 3 allows us to do that. I'm able to delegate role-based access into this environment, both for business unit management, as well as in a provider world, I can delegate common tasks down to my end user clients as well. Things like adding users, things like managing application architectures, etc. I have the ability to incorporate hybridity here. We talked about that just a moment ago, but the ability to create very quickly a hybrid environment that aligns and unifies management across the our endpoint environments into one single pane of glass is critical for lower total cost of operations and reduction in complexity. Finally, I'm able to understand, and this is probably an understatement, but very critical piece, I'm able to understand my utilization and gain full transparency into my billing, right? That's been one of the biggest challenges we've heard from organizations who have moved into hyperscalers. Quite simply, the fact that they're unable to predict month over month what their billing is going to be. This is something that Otava standardizes on and simplifies, giving our organizations who are in the Gen 3 platform full transparency into what they're using and what those billings will see. And we'll see that in a moment in the demonstration. And I'll wrap with self-service, right? This is one of the biggest benefits to agility, is the ability for organizations to come in and self-serve common functions, and up to and including the ability to take business processes that are reusable in the organization, create a service blueprint or VAP, and deploy those within moments out to multiple business units or multiple tenants in a provider model, dramatically reducing time to revenue and complexity of operations and management of those environments. So I think we'll see some of this here in just a few seconds.
Thank you. All right, well, let's pivot over to the demonstration. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to Chris and Jeremy. What we're going to do now is open up and give you a live demonstration right into the cloud itself.
All right. So team, what we've done today is we've pre-populated some of this in the interest of time to go through this pretty quickly. Chris, let's log in and start with deploying a VApp workload to the environment using a template. Now again, VApps are groups of virtual machines that can be viewed as a business service, for example, an end-tier web application in a common use case. We'll log in currently with our demo admin role. We'll select the libraries to display the self-service capabilities, and then we'll select our demo web server VApp as a template and enter the VDC selection area. That's basically as simple as it gets for deploying a multi-VM end-tier based application. Now, we only have one VDC organization available in this example, but if we had more, the user could select the consumption mode or performance SLA he or she desires based on the VDC. And this is a very unique way, again, for us to align hosting of business applications based on the business requirements for that application, for responsiveness, for availability, etc. This flexibility aligns directly to our ability to deliver and monetize SLA-driven outcomes for our clients, and for our provider markets, your ability to take that downstream to your tenants. The apps also allow service provider clients the ability to templatize repeatable application services and to quickly deploy and manage those across multiple end user clients, dramatically reducing your time to management cost. All right. Before we go into the management of the app, I want to quickly point out here that our service providers would like to see all of their client VDCs in here. This provides a single pane of glass for management of multiple clients, as one might expect. And we can then extend out to either enterprise from a business unit perspective or from a provider standpoint out to your end user clients, single pane of glass control across all of those environments. Now, let's go in and explore how we can manage these VApps. Via our action menu, we can change the owner of the VApp, and this is useful for delegating control to business services, either to specific administrators or even downstream clients should we desire. We can also change how this VApp interacts with our networks. Let's connect this web server to our DMZ, for example. While Chris is doing that, I will point out that we can also configure NAT rules. We can configure port forwarding rules. And this is really one of the benefits of the VMware vision around bringing in a true software-defined networking architecture through NSX into this platform. All of these changes are being made, as you're seeing here, through this single pane of control. And that allows either our internal organizations or our service delivery teams to quickly modify and control these environments without having to go into multiple portals or access multiple points of our delivery ecosystem. All right, once Chris is done, we'll turn on this VM, or this VApp rather, and that starts all of the VMs in this business supply group. Now, as you can see, the ability to create logical groups of VMs would naturally form an application service is a really powerful tool to help us deploy and manage what are often complex deployments very quickly and very easily in a consistent, structured manner. Excuse me. Once this turns on, we're actually going now and see some of the additional controls that we have over this environment.
Jeremy, while we're waiting, what integrations can you speak to here that clients might be interested in?
So we have a couple integrations we'll be talking about a little bit. If, Chris, if you don't mind, go up to our More section here at the top. We've integrated this platform with two key features from third parties, well, one third party. We have a backup solution through Veeam using Veeam 10, and we've also integrated VMware's vCloud Director continuity platform into this as well. So organizations not only can deliver, host, and manage application services, but protect their data and ensure continuity of those applications as well. Again, all through the single pane of glass. All right, now that this is on, let's go in and shut down our Web 02 virtual machine. Once we shut this down, we can quickly copy it, adding another VM into this VApp. Could be useful for an application such as load balancing or other purposes. You'll notice the copy options here mimic the same functionality that we just deployed this VApp to originally. And Chris is going to go through that same process. Again, this simplicity and consistency in the user experience avoids us having to train or retool a lot of our internal staff around multiple different methods of management. And this is another key benefit of where we see an overall reduction in TCO by simplifying, standardizing, and having consistency across a lot of these virtual machine functionalities. All right. Once we've gone through these steps, we'll power on Web 02 and resume the rest of the process here. So Chris, if you could turn on the Web 02 VM. Oh, we're already powered. Yep, not yet. Let's turn that on. All right. Now, one of the things we can also do here is understand really a couple different components of VApps. One of the most challenging options in multiple machine management, right? Think about an end-tier application, is which processes have to start in which order. Think about a database server, right? That has to be online and available before an application server that utilizes it is able to be brought online and consumed. So this start-stop order within the VApp configuration allows us to quickly structure how those order of operations are executed here. Additionally, we can also look at a logical network diagram. Given the fact that we are running NSX, we can have multiple different networks for different purposes and utilizations within our VDC, we can quickly understand the configuration and attachment of these VMs, especially multiple NIC VMs, into those logical networks. Aligned with this, network also allows us to set up networking rules such as firewalling and NAT services. An optional feature here would also be NSX microsegmentation, policy-based or otherwise, as discussed earlier, to better secure our east-west communications. Again, the point I'd make here is you're seeing all of this without having to log into multiple control planes and multiple tools to accomplish this work. Finally, under our guest properties, we can control the OVF properties of this environment and allow, through sharing, allow access to other users of this virtual application. Again, if I'm an IT services organization, I can share out to multiple business units if those units consume this, or I can also copy this to multiple organizational VDCs for tenants in a service provider model. Metadata tab allows us to quickly assign specific metadata tags. We talked a little bit about code as a service. This allows us to assign some metadata to these VApps to better tie back into an Ansible or Terraform playbook and be able to quickly automate and manage some of our consistent applications. And then finally, under monitor, we can look at different tasks and events that affect the health, performance, and availability of these virtual machines. Now, let's take a shift for a quick moment and talk a little bit about consumption. Chris is going to log into our VROPS platform. Our vRealize Operations Manager is what controls visibility into consumption and billing for the platform. Couple of interesting key features here. In a private cloud, for example, if I'm an IT organization dealing with chargebacks, I can assign different billing and consumption models to those business units. If I'm a provider, I can assign the same to different tenants, perhaps. And this allows me to very quickly align or match this very flexible platform to my current business processes. So don't retool your business to match the tool. Retool the tool to match your business. Now, what we'll also do is understand from our tenant admin in that demo environment. We'll also go in and look at a bill. And this really speaks to the transparency we have around consumption. You'll see here, and all this is based on our billing policies that Chris just walked through, but we have very granular reporting of exactly what was consumed, how it was consumed, and how that relates to an overall charge. So the whole concept of unpredictable, unforecastable billing that we've heard about in the hyperscale world goes away with this level of transparency. And this is available on demand, team. This is not something that has to be queued up through a support ticket or otherwise. This is available in the platform as is. So you'll see as Chris scrolls through here, right, a summary of charges and then a breakdown of how each one of those charges were calculated. Let's transition over, Chris, if we could, now to our backup and continuity. Well, you asked about integration services earlier. We'll start quickly with our Veeam services, right? So Otava has built into here, as I mentioned before, Veeam 10A specifically, as well as the disaster recovery and continuity service with Cloud Director Availability. This service through VMware is a very cool service. This, incidentally, is the same tool that we talk about migrations into the platform with. And you'll see how simplistic it is to actually conduct both replication startup as well as failover and either a migration or a test of that failover. So directly within the portal, let's log in, Chris, and we'll go into our Veeam configuration first.
While we're doing that, Jeremy, there's a question about HIPAA compliance and the availability of this from a compliant perspective.
Makes perfect sense. We'll be pleased to know all of the storage here is encrypted at rest. All of our data is, especially through Veeam and through Cloud Director Availability, encrypted in flight. These data centers are being validated and certified for HIPAA high-tech, as well as PCI compliance for those of us in the financial services space. All right, we're now looking, team, at Veeam. Let's start quickly with our dashboards. We see protected VMs. We see the number of jobs we've been able to execute. We see the status of those jobs. And we see a quick health overview, successful jobs, warnings, or errors, right? So from a backup administrator, I now have a very quick way to thumbnail how my backup environment is performing and focus my energy on anything that I need to actually focus on in either the warning or the error message. Again, I'm not logging into Enterprise Manager with Veeam. I'm logging just into my standard VCD portal. Let's also, Chris, go quickly into jobs. We'll look at that quickly. All of my backup jobs are here, and this information is being pulled directly from Enterprise Manager. But again, the simplicity and the consolidation of management into one frame of or one pane of glass, if you will, is very, very beneficial. Where now I have full control over the VMs I'm protecting, how I'm protecting those in my jobs, and then going in and being able to search for, from a retrieval basis, items or files in this model as well. So everything you could possibly want is at your fingertips quickly and easily in this architecture. All right, Chris, let's flip over now to our DR as a service platform.
And we have just a couple minutes to wrap up here.
Yeah, we'll talk real quick and click fast. Now, in this model, you'll see us set up quickly a cloud-to-cloud replication. And I did want to step through this very quickly so that you could see how easy it is to set this up. Again, understand, if you're running vSphere today internally in your data center or your environment, this is the level of simplicity that you can replicate into the Otava cloud. It's also the simplicity that you have to create a disaster recovery plan for your current Otava hosted environments between data centers. And this is a very compelling benefit for organizations. So Chris is going to quickly set up a replication job for this VApp. And again, understanding we're replicating the entire VApp. We're not going at a VM by VM by VM basis. We'll quickly create an SLA policy, right? 5-minute SLA, our retention policy here. We could exclude specific disks. We could configure a seed VM if we wanted to seed a migration, etc. We'll hit finish, and that's actually going to immediately start our replication process. Team, it does not get much simpler than that, right? This is pretty straightforward. And in a moment here, you'll see us being able to actually have a true health status of these replications. So very, very quickly, we're able to jump in here and understand. Now, we haven't replicated anything yet. We're still progressing. So you'll see our reds turn to yellows and greens. There we go. It is that quick. So let's dive in, and we're powered off there, so we're not replicating. That's not a big issue. But let's jump into one of those, Chris. We can go in here and again on the fly, go in and change retention, change SLAs for recovery. Again, fine tune this based on your own continuity strategy. So we've covered at really, really high level, barely scraping the surface here, some of the functionality in our Gen 3 platform. I would invite each one of you to engage us following this webinar and get a deeper dive of the platform, understand how this could impact your organization based on your requirements, based on your application requirements and additional functional requirements. But thank you. Looking forward to continuing the discussion. Laura, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. I know there were a couple questions that we are answering online, so keep those questions coming, and we're going to get them either answered online or in our conversation here. But just to wrap things up for today, number one, you are more than welcome to get your own personal demo. We can take much more time, delve into your specific needs, and make sure we're optimizing and customizing a solution for you. So I recommend that you do request a demo from us today. Or hey, if you're ready to jump right in, let's do that too. One thing that we want to entice you with is a 30-day free trial. We want you to try it, play in the sandbox, try it on for size and see what you think. And this isn't just for the cloud, but it is those complementary services as well, including backup, DRES on VMware, our DRES powered by Zerto, and other services that we have. So we'd love for you to see the whole complement, try it on, use it, and see how well it fits for you. So encourage you to get going on that and contact us. And we'll be reaching out to you after this with these slides and an overview of this so that you have the materials for you and can reach out. A little bit about Otava. If you're not aware of us, you may not know our name because we're a relatively new name change, but we've been around for 26 years, and we position ourselves in the marketplace as the market's secure and compliant cloud provider. And as you can see, we have plenty of compliances that we're audited against, and that's not just in the data center realm, that's the services as well. You saw the robust tools, and we have a deep and wide portfolio to complement those services. We love partnership. We talked about transformation for a reason, and that is because we want to partner with you through that entire transformation, and that's how we're going to be successful together. Let us help you grow your cloud business together. And that is not just for enterprises, but it's for our service providers too, and that enablement side of it. And last but not least, if you have seen our website, or if you've seen our tag, our logo, you'll see that built into it is a tagline, and it says "Expect Exceptional." So it's not just a tagline for us, it is really putting our money where our mouth is and providing exceptional service. And it's the reason we've been around for 26 plus years, and it's the reason we're going to be around for another 26 plus years, is that high touch, exceptional service that we want to extend to you. So with that in mind, I want to first of all thank our panelists today, Patrick, Jeremy, Chris. We couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much for your participation today. And for the rest of you for joining us for today's conversation, thank you so much for joining us. We will answer any questions that have come across, and we'll certainly send you materials from today's deck. And we are just excited to talk more about this, and encourage you to contact us for that free demo, contact us to learn more. So with that, I'm going to sign off and thank you, and thank all of our panelists for a wonderful presentation today. Thank you so much on behalf of Otava.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.